Welcome everyone to this presentation about the archaeology of the IBM PC110. Uh, everyone is familiar with the concept of archaeology. You dig into some artifacts or whatever fossils, and you try to figure out what was going on, make a story around it, and see how things match. So something similar also happened for us with this PC110. If you're not familiar with the PC110, it was considered, still considered, I don't think IBM ever made anything smaller than this. So it was an interesting laptop. Like if you hold it, I don't know why is it so attractive. Perhaps like because of the buttons that they look like a Nintendo DS or something. So and it has like this metallic case and sits like in this nice form factor. But it comes with a curse, and the curse is there is a bridge battery inside these laptops. And I'll explain a little bit why the bridge battery was even placed for the battery. The bridge battery is based on a nickel metal hydride technology. And so the potassium hydroxide tends to come out with enough time and basically uses the wires as pipes. So with the capillary effect, basically makes it to the board, and it's very interesting. Like there's this bodged diode there on the board that is also connected to some more places on the across the board, and basically potassium hydroxide makes it all the way through the whole board and basically eats the board for you in I can say no time, in 20, 30 years, whatever the laptop's age is. And it's like very nasty and corrosive. Like you can see like all the case basically starts getting peeled off. Like in the case of that picture on the bottom, it even takes the flex PCB, like the flex for the keyboard. And this is not just one problem with the laptop. Again, the laptop was designed with a lot of forward thinking. Like it basically uses a camcorder battery. The camcorder battery actually that's used in the PC110 is considered the first commercial lithium-ion battery that Sony made for camcorders. So it uses the camcorder battery, but however, the technology at that time, the power supply of this laptop was unable to charge the battery while operating. So you had to choose one. And if you wanted to have an uninterrupted work with the battery, let's say on a travel, you had to pack like, I don't know, 6, 7 of these camcorder batteries and then switch them as you operate. And in order to not like get interrupted to basically shut down laptop, put a new battery and so on, they had this bridge battery. But again, you see with passage of time, that actually turns to a curse. The other problem with this laptop, which I'm not addressing it in this presentation, was basically the polarizer, which based on the DSTN technology, the adhesive thing is cellulose, and over time basically goes bad. And you see also this different screens. Like it's very rare to find like good screens working. Anyway, so back to what potassium hydroxide does with the board. As it goes through, you see like the corrosion, vias, everything that start basically getting like taken care of, and the laptop pretty much dies. And attempts to fix the laptop were usually failing because of the lack of any schematic, any layout, any description of firmware. And if there was anything around there, was also like done by some enthusiasts and mainly in Japanese. So that was another, language barrier. And another interesting thing is like when you look at the laptop and you dig in a little bit deep, you see there are BGA form factors of, let's say, 486. And you look at like any data sheet about like 486, or let's say the F65 353, which is like a VGA controller, and you don't find anywhere like anything about mention about BGA. Same thing with the chipset. The only BGA chip there is like a PCMCIA controller that, yeah, you can find the data sheet, the ball map, they call it. That tells you where things are, but the rest, nothing was available. And in addition, there were some notorious chips there that everyone knows, like in the retro field, that there's no data sheet for. For example, the chipset that's also BGA, double cursed, the VL82C420 was part of the Scam 4 series that literally you cannot find data sheets for. You find data sheets for things that came after and things that came before, but that particular thing, which turned out, again, from like digging into details and finding the stories, it was an order placed by Compaq to VLSI, and then VLSI had to do some work with Intel. So could be NDAs. I have no idea what basically hindered it to be published. Anyways, there was really not that much to find out. And then for the sound card, which they used the ESS 488, same story. One chip that everyone was looking for a data sheet for, there was nothing to find. And last but not least, the two ASICs, which Bowman, so far, I didn't find in another laptop, but Pluto, for example, was used in this older brother or bigger brother, let's say, of PC110, the 230CS. And that one is an ASIC, of course. You're not going to find that much about. So first thing was to figure out what can we do with the existing boards, and pretty much like reverse engineer and understand like what was going on to shed some light, to what is like the circuit and how things are configured. So the first thing I had to do was basically take a cross section of the board. So the PCB that is used for PC110 has a thickness of 1 millimeter, and it turned out it's like a 10 layer. Stack up is signal, power, then 4 signals, another like ground layer, and then 2 more signals, like total of 10. And there is next to no core there, and it's all like, for those who know about PCBs, it's all like INIG. It's like very thin 0.03 millimeters of insulation, and then you have like the layers which they use like 0.07 millimeter of copper, and stack the whole thing up. And I mean, it's very impressive to have such technology in 1994, 1995, like, while it's considered HDI for those who know about PCBs, and you look at HDI as like something from 2010, like how do we have such technologies like back there? I mean, that's a proof of time machine, it looks like here. And so taking a cross section, you see, because the lack of the core, there's this waves you see like in this region. You see the layers were all waved. So this makes let's say options like X-ray not feasible and not useful for this. I mean, I still want to look into more advanced like CT scan methods, but to whatever I had in hand, whenever I was doing the cross sections, I was able to just see some parts of the waves. You go a little bit deeper, you lose the peaks, and you get to the troughs. And then I was really not able to get things, and it was very like non-homogeneous, because it's like some places where there is more density of copper, things were more flat, but in other places it was like waved. So it was really hard. So decided to take the hard road and sand down layer by layer. And you can see here as the progress, you go through it. So basically slap the board on first, I mean, take a scan of everything, what's going on. A scan is literally, by scan, I mean a scanner, a normal, desktop scanner. And I had to slap the board on a huge piece of aluminum to make sure like I don't get warping as I go through it, and start sanding. And just with normal sanding and like a 600 or like 1,000 nit, you start getting things, but you see like it starts eating from the edges or something. A lot of like, it's very interesting. A lot of statistics actually happens here, like as you go through, like shaving off from the board. But then you see right away like this wavy pattern starts showing up as well there. So I had to really go by hand, slowly, layer by layer. And I tell you, the hardest part was when you were trying to go through this power or the like the ground plane to the next, because you're going from something super hard to something very delicate. And I mean, that was probably the biggest challenge there. And I was using like this part of my hand, like you have no idea, probably 30, 40 hours just of sanding, it took through this. And I mean, often I just told myself, like, I was just reminding myself, when you go through hell, keep going. It was literally hell. Like, it was just sweating, and you can't just stop. And often I had to do a lot of this under magnifier to see what is happening. And the moment you see, like, you go like without checking, and then you look back, like, oops, some of the traces were gone. I don't say a lot of it happened, but in some instances that happened, and that actually added to the challenge. So every time you go through a layer, and again, this was my highly advanced standing block, basically, or just a piece of like a flat piece of the paver I had left from my driveway. And the sanding, like, I got those pieces of from Amazon with, like, with the gloves, and definitely wear a mask, because uh, for the first layer I didn't, and it was so irritating. Like, you have like all kinds of nasty things you don't want to sniff. So at some point, when I reached again, this was like, I took the two layers off, and then I went to the ground plane. Went through the ground plane. Then there were four signals. Then I got to the power plane. From the power plane, I was so exhausted, and I was like, let's try the Dremel. And that was definitely a terrible idea. You can see here, like, all those bald spots. And that basically made me go for a second board. This time I tried from the other side, and I kept digging, and I got again to the point. And again, as you go through this, you're like, I promised myself only 10 layers, but now this is the 13th, So, as you go through that, I mean, I got also some, like, some more mistakes here. And the good thing is, like, from whatever I had for that first time, I was able to overlap them and then figure things out. And like, as I said, like, the scanner is just a normal scanner, and then don't go more than 2000 DPI. You will get too much information, and your, like, let's say if you want to import things to KiCad, you will have a hard time, like, moving things around, everything. I mean, even with like a powerful GPU and a CPU, you still will have a lot of problems. So don't go more than 2000 DPI. Like, you really don't need more than that. And I mean, you see here the sanding block sitting there, and do a scan, and then you basically collect the information. So first thing basically I had to do after the scanning was laying down all the vias. And another big challenge here was there was a mix of vias and blind vias. And of course, as you go through different layers also, some blind vias will show up. They're like, I don't know, between layer 4 and layer 5. And some disappear and some go. So what I had to do was, like, just lay down all the vias and do your best guess. I mean, there's a way to look at the vias and understand if they are blind or not. And that is basically the blind vias, they look always filled, because I mean, they have also smaller diameter. And again, they get basically filled right away by the layer that are underneath, while the pass-through ones, they tend to have, like, the arc, like, in the middle. You can see, like, the hole. I mean, sometimes filled and sometimes empty, depending on, like, the solder, like how the solder basically is spread there, or the size as well. And then after you're done with the laying all the vias, and in this case there were 6,000, 4,000 blind vias and about 2,000 pass-through vias, you start laying basically the tracks. And again, I don't know how I finished this. There were something around 44,000 tracks. I mean, traces, And I just remember when I started, and then it finished. So I really don't know how. And I tried, trust me, I tried. I work on a lot of automation things. I tried automating the process. It's very hard. You have to figure things out because it's so tiny. And again, the sanding is also not perfect. So you will have, like, different shades. Like, something looks dark in this spot, and then the other side, like, it's like you really have to use your brain to figure things out. And then sometimes, like, especially when you go through this middle layers, you look from, let's say, one layer, and you see the layer below, the one next and next, but then they become just more blurred, and you use that blurring to figure out, like, no, this doesn't belong to this layer. And you just keep going through them. And again, a via pops up out of nowhere as you go to the next layer. And it was definitely challenging and hard. So once you get everything and you look back, you're like, wow, that is a lot of things. Like basically, especially when you just enable all the layers and you look at this, you're like, there's literally no space left in this board, and then let alone this like a 30-year-old, like, board with so much complexity in technology. It's really impressive. And so after you're done with all the tracks and the vias, here's where basically your let's say a background in electrical engineering or something really helps. You start basically figuring out the net list, and that is you start naming every one of these traces, because if you just press on a trace and highlight it, it shows you based on the connections where it goes. And then you start basically with components that you know, and this is where identifying components also very important. So there are a lot of, I mean, most of the components, 99% of the components are like more than 99%. They're BGA, except like, I don't know, some like connectors or something. So these tiny components, they usually come with like some codes, like one letter sometimes, or two or three. So there are some lookup like websites. You put basically the code, just write SMD lookup, and then you put the code, and then it shows you, for example, a list of like 20 different things. And then you look at the date that they were created. And let's say, for example, this is 30 years, if something is 20 years or something, cut them off, list comes smaller. And then you look at like the fact that this board was made by Rayos in Japan. And let's say out of those, let's say, I don't know, 5 left components, let's say, I don't know, 2 are made in China. And let's say, no, three are like, let's say, Panasonic and Ricoh or something. Okay, kick out the Chinese ones because definitely they were using like local sources. And then you go further down, you look at like, oh, this is like, I don't know, something unrelated, like a digital whatever. Okay, kick that out as well. And then you end up with the, hopefully enough choices that you can pick. Let's say 2 transistors, both NPN, great, just pick one. And sometimes it was like getting more complex, and that was like where I had to do some statistical guesses, or I mean, if the guess was not helping, try to buy actually the component, go swap it on the motherboard, turn it on, see if it still works or not, and whatever is related. I mean, it's also not easy when you have like a crowbar that is supposed to work only when you trip the voltage, and you're not going to trip the voltage to test it. But I mean, those instances, luckily, I was able to figure it out without like, too much disaster. So out of the big chips, the ICs, basically, the most, the nicest one to all was like the PCMCIA bridge, which was BGA, and the ball map was available. The storage controller was also, I mean, relatively hard to find the data sheet, but it was also very nice. It was a QFN chip, and like I was able to get the information. The floppy disk was also easy, and the logic gates, a lot of logic gates, about 15 logic gates on each side or something. They were also not so hard to figure out because, let's say, I don't know, it said like VL74, so that's a 74, I don't know, LC, whatever. It's like basically the TTL gate, or some, let's say, I don't know, like flip flop or something. Like they had it's very interesting. They had a flip flop to turn on or off the thing, and then the logic of the flip flop was used like to control entire ASIC or something. Like, why didn't you put ASIC in the first place? Whatever. I'm appreciating the design. So, but the ones without data sheet was basically I mean, to start with, the CPU, which uses the PC110 uses an 486 CPU, the SX version, which is low power. And anything you were able to find online was basically the QFN version. However, I was able to find the die map that was showing the pins on the die, which was aligned, very nicely aligned also with what the QFN package is. But of course, nothing about BGA. So it turned out the 3 BGA chips basically on the board were custom repackaged by Ryo System for this laptop. Really impressive. Like, think about it again. 1994, they were able to do this. It all sounds like a sales pitch for Rayos, right? And I think they're out of business, and I think Ryobi bought them or something. So, I mean, kudos to this work. So, Next one was basically the chipset, as I said. That was also in the BGA form factor. You were able to find the datasheet for the QFN. So for this too, I was able to use X-ray. Actually, I had to go to my dentist and beg him to use the X-ray, and I got a free root canal for that. No, I'm just kidding. So, and then with the X-ray, I was able to find basically from the known QFN pins where, I mean, for the CPU, I had already the ball map, but it was also nice to just, reassure. And then now basically on the die map, they call it, which basically points, which like the bond wires are related to what function. And then you have to track them back on that interposer to see to which ball they will end up to go. And that gives you basically the ball map. So we got the ball map basically for the CPU. And then the same thing also for the VGA. So 82C420 tend to be the hardest one. And again, I said that because it was part of the SCAMP 4 and no data sheet was available. However, I had to do the same thing there because there were two more laptops. There was one laptop from, I forgot I put the name there, like something 910N, a Centra, I think. And then also the ThinkPad 230CS. They were using also the QFN version. So it was useful to find which BGA go to which QFN because on that other laptop, we were able to, let's say, track down, see where things are, and use that, like, cross-validate or just use also for the information to figure out where things are. And of course, the ESS, actually, ESS 488, which is basically a sound drive. It's a sound like a synthesizer. Sorry, just a sound card for the laptop. This chip also lacked data sheet. However, I was able to find an ISA sound card that was based on this chip, and that revealed a lot of pins for me because from the ISA bus, I knew the pin out. I just needed to track them back and forth. It goes to like a 244 buffer, but then after that, you can find out where things go. And then also all this, the capacitors, everything that around it, which were like, for the filtering and so on. And then the gate arrays, of course, they're known for it because they're ASICs. So, and there was also a 4 megabyte flash. So all these guys, lack of data sheet was definitely a problem. So again, like the method looked similar to, you're familiar with the Rosetta Stone. You have information from something, you have another information from another one. You try to match these things because they are all going in circuit together. But you end up, luckily Rosetta Stone didn't have that. But in PC110, you end up with things that in the end, they just call them unknown because, let's say, it goes from one ASIC to another ASIC. There is still room to figure these things out. Just turn it alive, look with the scope, see what goes through, and try to figure out what the signal is. But again, it's available to for people to explore more and more and figure things out. So after you're done with basically, not done to a good point, get enough the net list and so on, you can then think about creating a schematic. But we'll wait for, again, digging a little bit more into the identification. As I said, we had to use dentist X-ray for that, and for the thing was just, again, X-ray. And again, let's focus on the 82C420, the chipset. So this was, again, part of the SCAMP 4. Trust me, I tried anything possible, exhausted my network, looked at different things. This fellow, he basically introduced the Bert McComas. He introduced the SCAMP 4, tried to contacting him. I am very close to him. I'm just a second connection, on my LinkedIn. Not that much success so far. I even have common friends. After common friends didn't go through. So hopefully this stage will be a call for help. If anyone can help us to get information about this for 82C420. And I'll tell you what for. For repairing something, it's fine. But if you want to do some crazy hacks where you want to keep the originality of the laptop and add like new things. Definitely getting more information from this folks will be very interesting. The closest I had is from this person, David, which it's very interesting. In his LinkedIn profile, he says that he was a test engineer for this chip. So somehow I was able to find, his phone number. It's very interesting. I found 4 phone numbers, just text random. Hey, I'm just looking for this. And in this environment that we get every day, all the scam texts, and I was lucky he responded to me. And like after explaining to him all of these things and so on, he's like, okay, give me 2 days. I'm going to check my basement. And after 2 days, all the hopes vanished, basically. He was like, I don't know, they had some cleanup of all the junk they had in the basement, and unfortunately this was all gone. And I was like, when? Maybe I can go after this like, dumpster dive. He was like, that was 5 years ago. So all the hopes were lost on that. So hopefully we can find other things. So then I turned to my friends from CLC, and they were able to use this photochemical method to decap the chip to, with some hopes to see like what we can find on the die. And oh boy, we found a lot of cool things. So again, back, like you can see the process is very interesting. Like they keep washing basically the chip, and then the laser goes and then applies something. And then, there were different stages, and I just put them here. Just like it's very cool to look. Some you do them like submerged, and some you do them as you wash. And then here you can see more details. And it's very interesting what is packed in this chip. And then once everything is clean, you need to do some imaging. And this is where my friend John McMaster helped a lot. And he was able to scan, and it's very interesting. You see, like you get this beautiful shot from the chip. You don't get it right away. You have to get very close once you see the bond wires, and then you have to take your time. You have to go very slow, because remember, like if you go too far, you will like start burning from the chip and destroying things. And so this is what we got, and it's available actually also on his website. You can look at it. I call it the Google Maps for chips, for die shot they call it. And interestingly, as we kept digging on the chip, we start finding also part numbers, because they were clearly here. You see, like in this region, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chips were already integrated. And of course, the 2 gate arrays that are available there. So these chips, we're able to find out what they are. It turned out like there are 2 interrupt controllers and 2 DMA controllers, 1 timer, and the RTC. As someone that I'm always interested about timing and all of this stuff, this was also for me a question: where is the RTC of this thing? There is a battery there, and where is it holding the time? So it's very interesting. It's part of actually the chipset. So these guys identified, we're able to find also which traces go to where. So that gave us already a lot of the unknown pins basically got revealed. And now we knew where they go basically to the bond wires, but we needed to also figure out the interposer. So this is the chip, and you see here also same chip, but you have it in QFN. So I had to split the chip in 2 halves. So that is the chip with the cover, and then this is the interposer. Of course, it's a hand process, so some of the tracks basically got lifted. And the X-ray was actually not bad to look at things, but you can see the overlaps are really hard to understand. You need definitely CT scan. So based on the X-ray and based on what I had there, I was with GIMP, I was able to basically just draw what I think is the best guess, and then also give it a test and see if this pattern keeps repeating. It's very interesting. If you do something wrong, you see it doesn't repeat, doesn't align, because you have basically 2 things that they are crossing, and you need a via for that. So where's the via? If there's not, so you're doing it wrong. So playing around with this, basically I had to recreate the interposer. And from the interposer, now I was able to find out based on the bond wires, which ball is referring to which pin just by number. And again, we had to cross-validate with this other motherboard from the Essentia 910N, and of course the 230 CS. And it's very interesting. As we're going through this, there was this mysterious hack, floating around that they were basically on these Japanese websites. They were taking from one of the balls on the chipset, like a track, and they were doing this turtle method to double the RAM that was on the chip. And we were always wondering, where did they get the information? What is that thing actually there? So when we did all this, tracks and everything, and then, because we were comparing it also with the 230 CS, it turned out that one is a RAS3, is to control the fourth bank. And actually in the 230, that is how the banks are controlled. So somehow they figured it out. I don't know if they had the data sheet or, it's not out of this world. Basically, they just compared this with that. And again, over there, like we have this in the Excel sheet, like all of the, whatever was known and what was not, and then cross-validated like in different rows. So this gave us basically a full picture of what was going on basically with the chipset, the VL82C420. And of course, we didn't give up. We went after the gate arrays, the two BGAs. So this was this is one of them, is the big one actually. This is the Bowman. And again, we got it also thanks to Fred from CLC. We got it decapped, and then we were able to scan it, and we got like high resolution what was going on. Again, this is left for the future. People can, do similar to what Eric has done Tube Time with like reverse engineering, basically the whole gate array, what was going on. And you can do so many things, understand what's happening with the chips and so on. But for the fullness of the schematic, we already have all the pins recognized, and for this phase of the project, we have everything. But if enthusiasts want to dig further down and turn it to an FPGA code or whatever, it's all available to you. Go nuts. And it's interesting, like as we were digging through this, we even figured out what gate array they're using. You get the gate array, and then you make your own custom mask on top of it to realize the circuit you want. And this is basically for the other one. I think this is for the Pluto. So Pluto uses basically this NEC 65625-180, and they're like in the data sheet you can find like different sizes and the technology and everything. So, and then Bowman uses a Toshiba chip. I didn't mention it here. It's like a Toshiba chip gate array as well. So the two gate arrays basically do things. And as I said, for the ESS, basically we use a sound card, and then we're able to track things down. And then this actually gives us more, expectation. Look, now that we can do this, can we actually upgrade it to the more advanced version of this ESS, which is ESS 11488, which is pin compatible, 16-bit, and it has like, FM synthesizer built in. And we're able to place it and then start working, but there's still some more work you have to do. And also, of course, we were like, can we add also a joystick controller? And because you see all these pins that are there, you're like, I can just modify this and add all these extra features, right? So some other interesting things popped up there. There was a chip that we didn't know what it is. It was just sitting there, just like it looked like a flash chip, and we didn't have the pins. But then once we got the pins with like, Rosetta Stone, everything is connected because it was just connected on a bus. And it was basically going mainly to the Bowman, to the ASIC. We took a chip dump, and we were trying to find out what these are. Again, thanks to Kevin, he figured out that these are Japanese characters. Because remember, this laptop was made for Japan. And we took it off, and then we booted the laptop, still worked without it. And but this was basically to load they call it the font mask for the Japanese characters. And it's very interesting. Like you have them in like all the configurations and so on. So the power supply is not placed on the laptop. So there was this 2x20, 40 pins basically, that were kind of unknown as well. Like you have some of them just go to, let's say, an ASIC. One of them goes back to an ADC part of this like let's say the two microcontrollers that are there. So we needed to learn about them as well. Great. Apply the same technology now to the power board. And to me, it felt more like, you play back in the day, play Mario, and then now you go, for example, to the next level, like, I don't know, it's like in Egypt now, like, I don't know, like, it just felt the same thing, the same design, but it's like now a different world. It was so much fun, to be honest. Like this one was relatively easy. It was like a 4 layer. And basically the same thing, but now I was more experienced. I started with identifying every component. It's interesting. Most of the components were similar. I see a letter like, I don't know, N. Okay, that's a diode similar to this one, and then just like, put it there. So I had to do this first, like get all the components, then take the components off, because I don't want to like end up with like, sacrificing more of them. And then scan, shave off, like basically sand, scan, and so on until like you get all the layers. So it turned out there was like a ground and power, signal. And I mean, signal, because it was like mixed, I will say, because there were all this big tracks as well, like, as a power board. And that also gave us more information that we went back to Rosetta Stone, add them there, and then more things become known, instead of just like some cryptic naming. Now they have meaning in the naming, like instead of like U21 pin 33. Great. What does that mean? You put, let's say, I don't know, 5-volt rail or 5-volt enable, or like, I don't know, 5-volt sense, or things like that. And again, the full, like, the layout was made, and then we were able to also continue also with the schematic. And then there was a nice docking station sitting there, giving you the parallel, serial, and the VGA output. Again, went through the same, advanced process of sanding, and we got also more information. There was something interesting here. I will talk about it a little bit further. Like basically, it revealed some untold stories about the laptop. And then there was this connector for the internal modem, and the modem was also, this was harder than, let's say, the power supply board. This was a 6-layer, and I had to go through that as well. And this gave us also some more untold stories, which I will go through it. And basically, there were 4 pins that they were going from the modem to the docking station connector, but on the docking station they were going nowhere. So Kevin Moonlight, basically, he traced them back, and then he looked at the data sheet, and he figured out that, like, oh, these 4 actually belong to a scanner. And basically that revealed to us that they provisioned a special docking station with a scanner that you can do fax mode in. Remember, this was like a business machine, right? But I mean, yeah, untold stories, but now you're revealing all of them, right? And the schematic, I mean, this was now the hard part, where I had to basically convert everything that was in the layout with all the information back to schematic. I organized it this way, which I will go through it step by step. You see what, like how I did it. Again, I love clocks. So the first one was about the clock tree. So basically, like the main oscillator, and how basically it funnels to different subsets and so on. And then, so I organized it relatively clean. Again, I have experience with electronics. That's why it's like organized and everything. There's not an automated thing. This is all manual. So then, of course, comes the top of the food chain, the CPU. Great, put the CPU. And it's very interesting. As I was going through a schematic and, you basically highlight one by one the net list and try to understand. You have to use 2 monitors, but I did everything on this laptop because I was doing it while I was trying to put my toddler to sleep, and then he's asleep, and I keep going. I see like it's 5 a.m. and like it was crazy. As I said, I definitely enjoyed the process, but there were times I was like, I'm putting so much time. I had actually screen time on my laptop, and one time I saw it was like over 500 hours. And this was like in the middle of it. I don't even want to think. I shut down that thing because I was like so worried I might get like some stroke or some heart attack or something. I was like searching what will happen if I keep going too far in something, you know? It was very interesting. So it revealed basically two debug ports, which it's a special ICE that I couldn't find yet for this. So you can run the CPU basically in different clocks and look at things and so on. Again, connectors are there, anyone can enjoy. And of course, the chipset with the RTC battery and so on. I have a lot of comments about like why you add a capacitor straight on the RTC battery and let the RTC battery just like, you know, leak. Well, whatever. It's a tribute to this marvelous engineering they did, and nothing is perfect, right? And for mine, I took the capacitor off. So, so for the VGA, for example, we found extra RAS and CAS pins. So this allows you actually to double the memory on the chip. Again, the turtle method. But it's much harder because there are BGAs and they're hard to access on the interposer. They also don't come forward. But there's a way. Like I work with another my colleague Julian on a flex PCB called we call it Pin Grabber. Of course, we're using it for Gen 11 plus Intel CPUs where you get the TGPIO routed out. You can do the same thing with this chip. Much easier. The balls are 0.6 millimeters here. And as I said, like the RAS3, we were able to uncover it like when we were going through all the, like, you know, the RAM and everything. And we were thinking like how we can route this back actually to the RAM connector to make it less messy, you know. And as I said, like every part, like as we went through it in organizing the schematic, we figured new things. Like, for example, this page of the schematic is about the BIOS, the flash that holds the BIOS. And we figured out that most of these dead laptops that they turn on, but you don't see anything in the screen, they basically don't have the flash BIOS, the flash BIOS enabled. And we saw like in some cases, it was the VCC for it or the enable even not working. Fix it and this whole laptop comes back to life. And the ASIC also revealed a lot of interesting things, like, for example, certain functionalities that each one of them do. For example, the Bowman in this CAMP 4, you see there is another chip that is supposed to be used with the VL82C420, which is VL82C144, which does the interrupt controls and everything. And you see the same signals go to the Bowman, like all the IRQs. And there are 5 pins that they go from Bowman to the chipset, which in the description, which this fellow Bert Macomas is like basically explaining it, he's mentioning a serial port between basically the C144 and the C420 that the interrupts are handled. And most likely, definitely Bowman is basically has that implemented to be. That's why like it's interesting to tap into these signals as it's live and try to understand what they are. Now I'll say like why all of these things can be useful. And the Super I/O also, like the one that controls the floppy disk and the parallel port, serial port, everything, like also is like in a separate page, and you can like learn a lot of details about it. This is the power sequencer chip that is on the board that actually handles also the this is for signature. It's a touchpad. It's a resistive touchpad, but I mean, people are able to hack it and make it like a touchpad. It's like a bad touchpad. It's not capacitive. So that plus the LCD that's in front, plus a lot of functionalities like this power switch and so on, is handled basically by this microcontroller there, which I will explain more details. And then the PCMCIA controller also showed like what features are on it. Like, for example, there's an audio signal that comes back from it, which that one actually in the audio schematic, like I was able to see why the quality of it is actually also bad, because it goes through such a long path until it makes it to the speaker. It's very interesting. They're all like passively connected there. I mean, in newer versions, of course, you put, let's say, a mixer. Let's say if it's like just slightly newer than this, you have like the AC97, and then you have like all the mix and everything. But this is all done with just a bunch of resistors. And I mean, very nice of them that they put here common emitter stage, just from combining these three to the next, and then they combine with some more, and then this is like the synthesizer coming in here, and like everything goes to the headphone jack. Headphone jack is fine, goes to another amplifier, goes to the speaker. Like it's very interesting, like how they organize all of these things. There was a mysterious chip in very few of these laptops, the 1890 It turned out it's just an external flash for the storage controller. Some version of the storage controller had, like, they didn't have internal ROM, so you had to basically use this external ROM. And I mean, that was some interesting thing. We were trying to figure things out. And then another microcontroller that handles keyboard, and another one also for the track point. They were sitting also here, and put them in another page. And the expansion port modems, and then like, of course, the scanner pins and the IRDA. This was the last one. And then the schematic for the expansion port, you can see, like, not that much. There was one revealed story, and then again, we had to look at it. Like, they moved from like a LT to another vendor for a component. That's why they had both of them, one of them unpopulated. I mean, it's just interesting to know. And the power supply board, and you can see why it's unable to basically provide enough power. That it can only power either the laptop or charge the battery. And definitely this can take a quick upgrade if someone wants to put enough time in it, and basically just make a drop-in replacement where it solves basically those problems. And the internal modem, as I said, like this revealed to us the scanner, also a separate schematic. And again, last but not least, the RAM expansion card, which I had to go through it piece by piece. This one, Kevin actually sanded the layers while I was going to sit on an international flight. He gave it to me right before I board, so I had a very nice reverse engineering session across the ocean. I got down and the circuit was done, and I was like, now I have to sleep, I guess. So then, just for appreciation and art, I put all the schematics also together. It's a terrible practice if you want to like have a readability. And I mean, I started also put the big pieces first, and then put the small ones, and so on. I tried to make it very homogeneous. And actually, this was also useful, because when you highlight all of them on KiCad, you go back to the layout, you will see the components that are highlighted there, and you see if you missed something, because the schematic, again, we're doing reversing the steps. Like, normally you start with a schematic and you turn to layout. No, you start with layout and you start to recreate the schematic and see how much is left until you finish the whole thing. And then once you're done, you basically connect everything in the forward way. So that was useful. It actually revealed something with like 89. I mean, they were all like, passive components, or like things that were flipped and so on. Now, digging further down in software world, we wanted to also see firmware stuff. So there are 3 microcontrollers that they were holding code on the laptop. One of them is the controller for the track point, this red button, which is based on a chip like a microcontroller D17137. And this specific one is a mask ROM. It means, you see this block here? The code is basically with a mask ROM was basically placed in it. So there is no circuit to read or write the code. You don't have access to it. There's another version of this that's like a OTP, one-time programmable. But this one was a mask ROM. So this one is still, again, left for, more exploration. And I can care less about this, because it's just a track point. I can literally just swap it with another microcontroller, write the whole thing from scratch. It's not a big deal. It just like reads a bunch of analog things and then figures out where the track point is, gives you some X, Y, or something. And it communicates actually with this other microcontroller, with the M3881, that is for the keyboard and PS2 and like the track point. So you can always figure out what is it communicating, or you can just sniff it as it communicates and then figure things. But I mean, it's available. We will at some point also try to do an optical reverse engineering of the code, sniff basically what's going on there. Again, left for the future. So the two microcontrollers, this was mainly Kevin's work. Basically, we were able to find, it was not very hard, but still not easy. Some of the boards, because we have so many of them, had a programmable, one-time programmable version of the microcontroller. So with a lot of fiddling, and again, because we had all the schematic and all the pinouts, we were able to pull the code and it was not walking apart. Sometimes we were getting things and they were not making sense. So we were just looking whatever the dumps basically on BinViz, and from the entropy and how things are, and it's so interesting like how much you can do with visual. We're able to find out eventually, like there was some swap of some pins or something. We're able to decode the thing, and then you see here it says like a power firmware, like the firmware for power control, or like a power sense micro firmware, and then the revision and time. It was just so cool to see, you're pulling this, and we were like joking, like the engineers who basically worked on this, they never thought like someone will ever come across this, in near future. And the same thing with the keyboard controller. We did this, and this was more challenging because it was really, there was not that much data sheet about it, and Kevin was basically just trying different combinations until he got something working, and then it made sense. And now community folks are basically digging into disassembling and figuring out what everything does, and I mean, you can really do a lot of cool things if you turn it to some level of disassembly and recreate it with another microcontroller or something. And so another, I mean, after you have all of these things, you think about what can this unlock and do, let's say, for the future. Yeah. So you can basically recreate a ITX version of this motherboard with all of these things. And then the cool thing is you can actually ditch all the BGA, because the BGAs, every BGA you take, it means you have to sacrifice one of these laptops. But you can actually use the QFN versions, and we did all the job for you. All of it is mapped. So this is already available also on the GitHub. You can take this and then continue with it, make a different form factor, or add also the power, a modem, or the things back on this board. Or you can take it a little bit further, and this one requires actually to know more about the 82C420, where you can put a Vortex 86, similar to, shout out to Ivan, who is basically running this project Tiny Llama, which is based on the Vortex 86. You can put a Vortex 86 and try to take out as least as possible from the laptop to make it original, but right with the Vortex 86. Again, these things are available for everyone to work with. Again, GitHub is available there. The GitHub is also organized. I have the scans, all the images that I used. If you want to take the challenge, or you find a bug in the future, I am hit by the bus, someone else wants to take over this project, they want to check what things were related to what, you have the scans, you can go through them. All the dumps, the ROM dumps, and the pinout, and all the notes, all the data sheets are also available there. And it was already highlighted in Hackaday, thanks to Jeff Geerling. It was also featured in one of his videos. And the Japanese also did a great job, always talking about it, being excited about all the work. Like Taka has this on his blog. So all in all, you can do a lot with contributing to this project. Is just, I would say, just in the beginning, you can do a lot of cool things with it. Keep it alive, and above all, have fun. And like to acknowledge, and my wife, who is taking care of my two babies, that's why I'm here. And everyone else, like Kevin, for all this, work and everything. Kevin is inspiration. Like, if you know about PC110, you definitely know about Kevin. Mike, for all the, organizing all this, promoting the thing and finding all the hardware needed and so on. Nick, debugging, verification. John McMaster, the die shots. Eric, for tube time for many, tips and tricks. And Fred from CLC for the decapping.
and Jeff Geeling, helping me with the presentation review. There's way more Jeff helped, and the folks on the IBM Facebook page. And always I get asked this question: why do you do all this work and put it for free? Very simple. If you love something, set it free. Thank you.